Welcome into Texans Today. I'm your host, Jeremy Chuggs, and before we get started, we are trekking on our goal. I want to get to 50,000 subscribers before the start of the 2026 NFL Draft. We're about 2 months away. We got some work to do. We passed 47,000 subs. Appreciate all y'all for hitting that sub button. If you haven't already, free Texans videos all year long. All you got to do, go down and hit that sub button. Join the #1 Texans channel here on YouTube. And coming up on today's program, we're going to be talking about 3 Texans who are on thin ice and have a ton to prove going into 2026. You already know who the first one is, and little spoiler, the other 2 are also on offense. So we're going to talk about all 3 of those players coming up on today's program. Hope you're ready. Get buckled in, and let's talk some Texans football coming up here on Texans Today. Here we go, talking guys who are on thin ice. First up, like I said, y'all probably already knew the first guy who I was talking about. It's C.J. Stroud. He has a ton to prove. He's going into his 4th season, and he can officially get a contract extension this offseason from the Houston Texans. Now, there's a lot of other variables to measure within that. Obviously, his teammate Will Anderson Jr. also up for a contract extension, but I'd say Will Anderson Jr., Texans are much more likely to dole out the money for him rather than C.J. Stroud at this point. He's made the divisional round in the playoffs every single season while he's been the starting quarterback for your Houston Texans. But we all have to admit, the 2026 playoff run might have been his worst play in the NFL so far. No doubt about it. Like, his 2 games this year in the postseason, up against the Steelers, up against the New England Patriots, they were god-awful. And they're not the C.J. Stroud that we all love and know and remember from these first 3 seasons of him playing football for your Houston Texans. He had a 51.9 completion percentage in the playoffs, 462 yards, 2 touchdowns. He had 5 interceptions, quarterback rating of 51.8, 5 fumbles, and he lost 2 of them. I mean, he's only 24 years old, but the kid's got still a ton to prove, right? We still feel like we're chasing that rookie year C.J. Stroud each and every single year. And honestly, if you look at his numbers from the regular season, they weren't amazing, but they weren't bad, right? 64.5 completion percentage. He had 19 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. I mean, it wasn't horrible, right? But he still has so much to prove whenever we're talking about being a franchise guy, talking about being a guy who can take this team to the promised land, because Kyle Shanahan, multiple other coaches around the NFL, multiple NFL pundits around the league all said the same thing, that this Texans defense was good enough to win a Super Bowl this year as long as they didn't have mistakes on the offense and on special teams. And that's exactly what happened for this Texans team during the 2026 postseason run. Now, this season is basically a $200 million season for C.J. Stroud. And what do I mean by that? Like I said, his contract extension can happen this offseason. I doubt that it will, but this season's going to decide whether he is the top paid quarterback in the NFL or whether the Texans maybe look to move on from him later on, right? Because if you're looking at the top 10 highest paid quarterbacks in terms of per year, right now, Dak Prescott sitting at #1 with $60 million per year. And then you have 4 guys who are tied there at $55 million. Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Jordan Love, Trevor Lawrence. And then a little bit of another tier break. You have Tua Tagovailoa, who the Dolphins are actually looking to trade right now. Brock Purdy, Jared Goff, Justin Herbert, and Lamar Jackson rounding out the top 10. So I'm going to ask you, you see the top 10 paid guys right here. Will the Texans make Stroud a top 10 paid QB? Give me a yes, give me a no down below in the comments section. And I'll tell you this, if they give him a contract extension, the answer to this is going to be yes. I don't see Stroud accepting a contract or signing on the dotted line unless he is being made a top 10 paid quarterback, because that's just how it works. He's the next guy up. He's a young quarterback, as I mentioned, still 24 years old. And those guys are looking to get, up next in that contract. Let me know down in the comment section. Do you think the Texans will make Stroud a top 10 paid quarterback? Give me a yes. Give me a no down below. I'm going to go with yes. I think they will make him a top 10 paid quarterback, but the kicker is it's not going to be this offseason. They're not going to extend him this offseason because really they don't need to. It doesn't make a lot of sense to jump the gun and do that right now. I think they're going to do the same thing that the Carolina Panthers are doing with Bryce Young, the guy who was selected one pick before CJ Stroud. They're going to accept his fifth-year option. And Spotrac, they just put out basically an estimation of what that would look like if you accept the fifth-year option, which, if you're new to the program or if you're not, well-versed in NFL contracts, basically, if you're a first-round pick in the NFL, teams have an option to extend your contract by one season. Normally, it's 4 years. For a first-round pick, you can accept a fifth-year option. That's what the Carolina Panthers have done with Bryce Young. That's what I expect the Texans to do with CJ Stroud. That evaluation by Spotrac has it at $27.2 million for that fifth-year option, a lot less than those top 10 paid quarterbacks. So I expect the Texans to accept that fifth-year option, push the can down the line, and I could even see the Texans doing what the Cowboys did with Dak Prescott, having him play out his full contract, doing the fifth-year option, and then franchise tagging him for another year, right? Because when you look at the top 10 paid quarterbacks in the NFL, obviously you see Dak Prescott, he's number one. But it's because he proved himself. The Cowboys didn't want to give him that contract initially, and he went out there and balled out on the franchise tag, and then the Cowboys said, okay, we're going to make you the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. I think the Texans go down that same route, and if he doesn't live up to the hype, if he doesn't play better and turn things around, then they're probably going to look to move on from CJ Stroud. Now, coming up, I have two more players that are on thin ice going into 2026, but are you ready for St. Patrick's Day? Almost here, and if you want the best gear out there, well, our shop, we're going to keep on adding items. This is our St. Patrick's Day t-shirt, the Houston drinking team. It's green, so you don't have to worry about getting pinched over there. All you got to do, go to chatsports.com/HOU green, and we're having a little friendly competition here at Chat Sports. My guy, Trace Moustakis with our Broncos channel, he's already sold a couple of shirts, and I said, hey, I bet you Texans fans show out more. I bet a lot of people here on Texans Today will help me out and buy this t-shirt because, like I said, the more t-shirts that we buy, the more that I'm able to put out there. And I'll tell you this, I have a Will Anderson t-shirt that I think a lot of y'all will really like. But to prove to my bosses that, hey, we can keep on making t-shirts, y'all want the t-shirts, help me out. If you like this, if you need a shirt for St. Patrick's Day, go check it out. It's chatsports.com/HOU green. Prove my bosses that H-Town represents and go get the Houston Drinking Team shirt today. That link is in the comment section and description of today's show. All right, next guy that is on thin ice and has a ton to prove, Blake Fischer. Going into his third season with the Texans after being a second-round pick out of Notre Dame. And last season, he was the swing tackle, and he was used a ton because Nick Caserio liked to do those 6 offensive line sets. Whenever they brought in a 6 offensive lineman, they usually brought in, or they did bring in, Blake Fischer. Now, the problem here is they didn't draft him in round 2 to be a 6 offensive lineman and a swing tackle. They drafted him in round 2 to possibly be the starting right tackle of the future. So that's the big question. Can he be your starting right tackle moving forward? Whenever they drafted him, he was very young. He's 22 years old. So he's still, turning 25 this season. So relatively young for NFL standards. And last year, in the 9 games played, not bad numbers per PFF, right? 337 snaps, an overall grade of 67.6, a pass blocking grade of 61.8, a run blocking grade of 69.4. I will say, though, in that Steelers playoff game, he was the reason why Stroud fumbled that first football. It was a flea flicker. Jaden Higgins was wide open down the field, and Blake Fischer just whiffed on the block on the right side. It's going to be very, very telling this offseason who they bring in and draft free agency along the offensive line, and whether or not they even give Blake Fischer a chance at that starting right tackle spot, right? They could easily bump Titus Howard back out to right tackle. Ariante Ursery, he's your starting left tackle. I don't think they want to bump Blake Fischer into guard because he's not very physical, as a guy on the interior. So I don't foresee him pushing into that right guard spot. I think they'd rather probably keep Ed Ingram. The Texans, they're going to bring in a ton of competition this offseason along the offensive line. Through the draft, I expect if Caserio doesn't draft at least 2 or 3 offensive linemen during this year's NFL draft, he's not doing his job. He needs to bring in more young talent. He needs to bring talent to try to push these guys forward. And we'll see. Will Fischer rise to the occasion? Or is he just one of those guys that's going to be a perennial, swing tackle backup guy who kind of makes his rounds across the NFL for the rest of his career? It's up to him to put in the work this offseason and really come into training camp, go into this preseason for the Houston Texans and earn that right tackle job, right? He's had all the excuses. He's been young. He's, needed time to develop, this, that, and the other. He's been in the NFL for 2 seasons now. All that is on the wayside. He needs to show up, he needs to prove himself, or he needs to kick rocks this next season because they drafted him in the second round for a reason. And besides Ariante Ursery, Nick Caserio really hasn't done a bang-up job in drafting offensive linemen. He got Juice Scruggs in the second round, doesn't start, right? He got Kenyon Green in the first round. They already traded him. We got to see some more development, some more talent acquisition from this Texans team moving forward, especially at that offensive line spot. All right, last guy up who has a ton to prove, Cade Stover. He is also going into his 3rd season with the Houston Texans after being a 4th-round pick out of Ohio State. This past year, he was the backup tight end. And this is not really indicative of Cade Stover's play, more so rather than this is back-to-back seasons that have been affected by injury with Cade Stover, right? And, we talk about the tight end spot. It seems like everybody in this tight end room has been affected by injuries. Cade Stover, we'll talk about Brevin Jordan here in a second, but Cade Stover, I think he has a lot to prove because I think the one part of his game that I was a little upset while watching him this year and last year had nothing to do with the receiving aspect. It was the run blocking grade. Look at the PFF run blocking grade, 49.8, and even the pass blocking grade wasn't that much better. And in terms of being a receiver, in 24 games over 2 seasons, he's caught 27 balls, 209 yards, 1 touchdown. Like, okay, but I think the Texans are going to bring in more competition at the tight end spot. Will they keep Dalton Schultz? He's on the last year of his contract. Brevin Jordan, they re-signed already, so he's going to try to make a comeback this year once again after 2 back-to-back season-ending injuries. And that's going to be a big key as well because if they bring in more talent, then I think it'll be a competition for the backup tight end spot between Brevin Jordan and Cade Stover. And I'll say this, based off everything that I heard around the Texans facility, people that are close to the team, if he didn't get injured, Brevin Jordan would have been ahead of Cade Stover and possibly would have been ahead of Dalton Schultz for this season. That's how high the Texans are on Brevin Jordan. Think of this. The past 2 years, he got injured, and while injured, the Texans already re-signed him to another contract extension both times. You don't do that if you don't think this guy can ball out. And during practice, during OTAs, during the preseason, Brevin Jordan has been that guy. And Cade Stover, he came in with all this hype of, he was CJ Stroud's teammate. He's a guy that, Stroud can really go to, a guy that he can target. And if we're also being honest, the injuries might start be piling up for Cade Stover as well, because the last time we saw Stover, he, luckily avoided major injury, but trying to catch a ball from CJ Stroud definitely looked like he got an injury to his lower body. So Cade Stover, he just, he's tough. He's a guy who I hope he can, get better this season. But also this past year, like I said, 12 receptions, 76 yards, and he missed over half the season. So is he going to be somebody this Texans team can rely on moving forward? That's all I have for you on today's show, folks. If you want to hit me up on Twitter, you can do so at Jeremy Chuggs. My DMs are always open. And if you made it to this point in the video, make sure you hit that sub button for free Texans content all year long. Like I said at the top of the show, we're trying to get to 50,000 subscribers by the NFL draft. If you haven't already, well, made it to the end of the show, why not hit that sub button for free Texans content?